In case City Council wasn't sure on that.
Okay. Call the meeting to order. Welcome to the PPACG. Yeah, I had to figure out where I stopped talking there to start adding real words. Board of Directors meeting. We do have a quorum. I think we'll do introductions first. I'll give people a chance to come in and sit down, and then we'll perhaps have a moment of silence for our 9/11 victims. That was 12 years ago today. Start with introductions. Dennis Heisey, Chair of the County Commissioners.
Rob McDonald, Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments.
Keith McCafferty, Mayor, Town of Raymond.
Don Knight, Colorado Springs, and I'll give my apologies now.
Before they close the
We leave at 10:30 to get up to the 9/11 remembrance ceremony at China.
Thank you. Glad you're attending.
Joel Miller, Colorado Springs City Council.
Wayne Williams, El Paso County Clerk and Recorder, and ballots go out for the military in 9 days for the November election. Just in case you thought the election was over last night.
Jim Nall, Public Transportation Representative.
Jim Moore, Military Affairs Council.
Tom Rona, CDOT Region 2 Director.
Norm Steentiller, County Commissioner, and regards from Dave Turley, who did not make it down the pass before it closed.
Tyler Stevens, Green Mountain Falls.
Sally Clark, El Paso County Commissioner.
Annie Pico, City Council, Colorado Springs.
Go back to true. Let's go back to our PPACG table.
Rich Buzzy, Environmental Program Manager, PPACG.
Beverly Mayeski, Financial Manager.
Craig Casper, Transportation Director.
And in the corner.
Jacqueline Hewitt, PPACG.
Thank you. Bill?
Bill Gamble, Regional Advisory Council from AAA.
Tom Castellara, Town Environment Chair of the TAC.
Maria Chavez, El Paso County. John Meyer, PPACG.
Dave Pop is CDOT Region 2. Doug Baller, CDOT Region 2. Stuart King, City of Colorado Springs, City Engineering.
Kathleen Krager, City of Colorado Springs Traffic Engineer.
Gail Nels, AMBCAD.
Lisa Streisfeld, CDOT Environmental.
Hi, Juffer Silvera, PPACG, Area Agency on Aging.
Scott Bartlett.
Sharon Brown?
City of Fountain. Mr. Snyder just came in.
Making an entrance?
Yeah.
Hi, Mark Snyder.
Thank you. This being the 12th anniversary of the 9/11 memorial, and Anna's already said he'll be needing to slip out to attend the ceremony. Let's have just a moment of silence for the victims. Thank you. And we are joined by
Travis Easton, Mayor Monument. Sorry I am late.
I just walked in.
No problem. Item number 3 is public comment, and we will just commandeer that right from the beginning. We have a couple of awards. We'll start with Don Meyer. Don?
Yeah, as Don's coming up, Don is part of our accounting team with Bev Mayeski. You heard her introduce herself. Don usually doesn't come to these meetings except when we honor her for 5 years of excellent service here at PPACG. And so she's one of the nuts and bolts folks that keep all the grants and all the money flowing, that make sure we fill the forms out correctly and get paid by our friends from CDOT and Thinking on Aging and all sorts of other folks. But Don, thank you so much for
Don,
the first 5 years.
this is your shot at the mic if you'd like it.
No, thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Reminder, it's not in CPA form.
What are you doing that for?
Crazy. Go ahead. How are you?
And Rob, you have a second one. Jeannie Dennis?
Jeannie Dennis, she introduced herself, and I got a few more minutes because she's way in the back. Jeannie is one of our ombudsmen, part of that team approach we have. You heard Scott, he's the lead ombudsman. But Jeannie is celebrating 5 years with us, and it's been amazing 5 years so far. It's the first 5 years. But she is one of the ones that goes out to visit all the clients, we'll call them, in the assisted living or nursing homes. So she probably has a lot of stories. I don't know if she'll use the microphone, but we appreciate all she's done for all those folks that are out there and all the efforts she's done on behalf of the area agency here at PPACG.
Jeannie, would you like to say a few words?
I'll just say a little bit. I'll just say it's very interesting to have a job title of ombudsman where practically nobody knows what that is. And so when I tell seniors in the facilities, I'm your ombudsman, it's really fun to watch their faces go from total confusion to real relief when I tell them I am their advocate in the facility. And so that's really, and it's rewarding to work with them as an advocate. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is for writing more stories now.
Cheers up. Anyone else in the audience that has an item they would like to bring before this board that is not on the agenda? Seeing none.
Actually, I had a hand up.
Are you in the audience?
Sorry.
Clerk and Recorder Williams.
Well, now that the right people have shown up, I want to thank mayors of Manitou, Fountain, and Monument for working with us on voter service and polling center locations, both for the recall and for the upcoming November election. It's one of the advantages of this group is the ability to call up someone and say, hey, we need a site, things have changed. So a couple weeks ago, I gave Mark a call and said, you got something in Manitou that where we can go? We worked with Travis and with Jerry on sites for the coordinated election so that we could cover parts of the county that we don't have offices in. And so I just appreciate the ability to collaborate and have the support and response from the different municipalities in our area. We also work very closely with the city clerk and others within. We had an issue with the police cutting off access to our parking garage for voting on Saturday, and got a hold of the city, and Council President King was able to work with us, and the police department was able to work with us to get that back opened. And they had a race going by our office that they didn't want people hitting the runners, and that's understandable. But we came up with a solution that worked and provided access for our voters at the same time. So, again, I just appreciate the ability to work with and collaborate with the different organizations that are present at this table, and wanted to say thank you. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate it.
Very good. Anyone else? Okay, moving on to our consent items. Anyone have any reason to call any of these off the consent calendar?
Move approval of consent calendar.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5, our committee reports. Start with our Transportation Advisory Committee. Tom?
Thank you.
Might as well try it sometime. Casawara?
Perfect.
Okay.
Better than you think. It's okay. We had a fairly productive meeting last month. We had the biggest item of note, we had William Johnson down to talk about the NHS, the National Highway System Enhancement, and we're trying to get some questions answered about why certain roads were taken off the NHS that were recommended by the TAC. And we had a long discussion, and we really didn't get anywhere. Everything was as it was. William had some good reasons why things needed to be where they were. He's big on making sure that there's data and facts to support why a road should be on the NHS, and I guess not enough facts were submitted to him to convince him to change any of the items that were already there that CDOT had already recommended. So it sort of stayed the way it was. We also had a status of the TIP and STIP project list, and a year-end status report from Mr. Casper, which I guess he may want to go over a little more than that. We talked about projects that have been delayed and are not spending the money fast enough. Our committee has been tasked with getting those projects' status updated so that everybody knows where every project is in terms of progress and funding. Also talked about the goals and performance measures for the 2040 RTP, and the TAC felt that we needed a little more guidance from staff, from PPACG staff, to define those performance measures. We asked for a kind of a tabular format so we could understand it a little better, because we're going back and forth a lot, so we wanted to get some clarification, and I think we'll be getting that this month at our next TAC meeting. We had a staff report from Ms. Chavez and a staff report from Brian Vituli regarding the small area forecast for the Regional Non-Motorized Transportation Plan, and that they're just starting the Transit and Human Services Coordination Plan. And we have a meeting next week, and we will have some of the items from last month move forward to this coming month's agenda. That's about it. I promised Dennis it would be short. So,
Questions for Tom?
okay. See, I can do it.
You can keep it short. I was surprised.
You've trained me well.
It's taken years.
Community Advisory Committee, I know Jim's not here. I don't know that we have anybody else to give a presentation, so we'll let that stand as presented. Regional Advisory Council, Bill Gamble.
Mine will be even shorter. I'm done. We had our meeting on August 29th. It was kind of Pikes Peak United Way Day. Perhaps you know that United Way is conducting about 90 community conversations on the future of what we want our community to look like. And we devoted part of our session on August 29th to that conversation with United Way, making recommendations in a open forum brainstorming kind of session. We made recommendations for seniors, one of which was to make sure that each senior gets an extra check every month, and free tickets to all the Bronco games. I mean, you know, quality of life for seniors. Yeah? So, why?
As long as you're recommending.
Well, we recommended. Also, as we told you before, we're entertaining our providers one-on-one instead of one at a time instead of all at one time in February. So we received United Way's presentation on August 29th, and that went well. And we'll be doing that throughout the year so that we can look at and receive the presentations from all of our community providers. Lastly, we've instituted a volunteerism program. We want to honor people who volunteer, especially those who support seniors, and that's an ongoing program. You hear more about that. We're going to try to do a recognition program on October 30th. And lastly, Guy will brief you on the Colorado Health Benefits Exchange. That's it.
Questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mobility Coordinating Committee. Is Gail here? There you are. Okay.
So, good morning. Happy to have some rain today. Our Mobility Coordinating Committee, I think, accomplished a great deal this last month. We were looking at, or I should say, Wendy Patterson from Metro Mobility presented some of what they're doing in transportation. And significantly, there is a new product or module that they're implementing, this interactive voice recognition. We are looking forward to the Independence Center being more advocates for people with disabilities. Pat Ellis also presented where we are on this software for joint dispatch and call. As you might remember, there's about $700,000 coming into the community, and right now we're at a best and final position with two software vendors. One would be Route Match, that is tied with some veterans programs, and another one is Trapeze, that is working with the city transit. So hopefully we will have a decision in the next by the next time we meet. And Guy had announced, and I guess he will announce further, the interviewing for the mobility management position, and I believe this person will be starting the end of this month. So we're excited to coordinate more with a actual position that will be coordinating all of us. We had another presentation from Mike Pruitt, who is with Rocky Mountain Healthcare, and he went up to this organization in the state that helps coordinate transit from a state level, and he represented us and moved the needle from $8 million in the bucket of at the state level for coordinating transit to $12 million, saying that he was wanting us to focus on urban renewal, some CDOT projects, and the disabled and elderly. So I think he represented our community well. Outside of that, that's about it. Any questions?
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sound like a busy meeting. Arkansas Fountain Coalition for Urban River Evaluation. Wow.
What's that acronym?
Yeah, it was
AFCURE. That's AFCURE.
And if you could introduce yourself.
I'm Ginny Johnson, and I'm with Colorado Springs Utilities. And I'm working with the group of folks in the Arkansas River and Fountain Creek Basin who are interested in water quality issues, and currently we're mostly wastewater dischargers that are participating in this group. And we have lots of water quality issues that we're working on together, including issues regarding our discharge permit renewals and post-fire water quality testing, which is kind of interesting. Rich has been working on a 319 grant to improve conditions in the streams regarding bacteria. We are also looking at issues with the new EPA's new ammonia criteria that will impact discharge permits. And we have future projects that we'll be working on for modeling nutrients in the watershed and temperature. And we have a lot of projects in place. Do you have any questions?
I don't have a question, but I do look forward to seeing your reports. I know the
Should be a
Fountain
lot
Creek,
of them.
Fountain Creek District, we were involved or are involved
Right.
in some of that same stuff, so.
Right, and they're participating in the post-fire water quality testing
Right.
to a pretty large extent, which should be interesting, so.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark.
And I know Utilities has been participating in our Waldo Canyon Regional Recovery Group, but I wanted to thank Rich for also being there. At the last meeting, Rob and I talked about PPACG having a more participatory role. I don't know exactly what that means, but it will connect us better because I think there's some things here that we probably weren't aware of. Utilities is always at the table, Mark Shea and Gary Bostrom and others, but I just think it's important to continue that relationship and see if there are other grants that may be available to us that are maybe from a different line that maybe we think more globally than just linear, from a linear standpoint. So I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was surprised in working with Rich at how much money is possibly available to do studies and work on
And then,
these problems.
and I don't know whether this is the appropriate place, but I just wanted to mention too that if the Fountain Creek Watershed District would like to participate in those meetings as well, Mr. Chairman, if you could let Larry Small know or whoever's.
Absolutely.
Somehow we could get the district on our distribution list because those meetings are open. and anyone's welcome to sit in and listen to the discussion of the bigger picture of this long recovery, which is closing Highway 24 on a pretty regular basis, and especially those folks in Teller really and Park appreciate the fact that we try to. You made it on one side, and then you can't get back home. But so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Air Quality Technical Committee, Rich Muzzy.
Good morning. The Air Quality Technical Committee met on August 28th, and the two primary purposes for the meeting were to go ahead and talk about the Air Quality Trends Report. That is an update of a report that was done in 2008, and that will be presented to the board for action in October, and also to give a briefing to the AQTC on the 2013 ozone concentrations, and that will also be a informational item for the board to hear in October. With that.
Questions? Thanks, Rich.
Thanks.
Item number 6 would be our action items. Begin with Brian Vituli giving us a tip amendment.
Good morning. Brian Vituli with PPACG's Transportation Program. We're asking for your approval of tip amendment number 8 to the 2013 to 2018 tip. Two items were requested by CDOT to add $1.8 million of regional priority project funds for the right-of-way acquisition of I-25 Cimarron interchange. Also, to add $424,000 of seventh pot funds, again for right-of-way purchase of at I-25 in Fillmore. Details can be seen in attachments 1 and 2, and you'll see in attachment 1 the request letter from CDOT that the right-of-way acquisition at I-25 in Cimarron, well, the funds for this action will complete the right-of-way acquisition, and will also take care of business relocations. And this is in the southbound I-25, westbound US 24 leg, the funded section of that. So right-of-way acquisition will be completed for that. Attachment 3 is the proposed tip table, as we're presenting to you. And then attachment 4 is the resolution of approval. I can answer any process questions. If you have any project-related questions, Dave Watt and Doug Lawler are here from CDOT to answer any of those.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval, and I would also extend our thanks to CDOT for continuing to work with us on acquiring the right-of-way. It's very hard to build a road without the right-of-way, so. And that's sometimes the longest process. So thank you for working with us to get that in advance so we can move forward with these projects.
Second that. Which is no surprise.
Commissioner Steen.
Really good to see funds now being allocated to I-25 interchange. What was the original purposing of the US 24 funds, current purposing of those funds? We're taking it from something to give it to the I-25.
Okay,
What's
yeah.
it coming from?
I'll take a stab at that. Those funds were
Thank you.
were already budgeted in the corridor. So with no particular specific use identified other than could be used on that particular piece of the corridor of US 24 West.
Other questions? Commissioner Clark.
I have a question for CDOT with regard to the property at 8th Street, the old motel that's really now a shell. I think that there's a lot of interest to figure out what's going to be done with that in the meantime of construction, and just, I mean, it's going to be an eyesore for a while, and I just wanted to know if we could work with CDOT to figure out what happens in between any construction that might take place.
I heard rumors of a paintball park.
Oh, okay. Maybe that would get you over to the west side occasionally.
Dave Watt, resident here with CDOT Region 2. I have not heard the paintball rumors. I've heard several rumors, but that's one I've not heard yet. Right now, what's been completed is the environmental cleanup. There was quite several problems within the building itself, including asbestos and some other hazardous materials that had been cleaned out. Commissioner Clark, you're exactly accurate. Is a shell of the building right now. But what now that we were able to do is start with the demolition of the building. That should be starting in the upcoming weeks. There's adequate funds in the project to complete the demolition, and then we're going to revegetate the area, fence it off, and you will see the building down here in the next few months.
Can I work with you on that, Dave, as to what that looks like? I don't know the plans for when we finish design and when actually funds will be available to do some of the work on the highway there, but I don't want it to just be a chain link fence and an ugly eyesore that we trade one for the next. And so if we could, the neighborhood and those of us that go by almost every day, I think that it would be in our best interest to figure out what that's going to look like in between. I don't know the funding sources and what exactly it'll end up looking like, but I just don't want to see it languish for years and years as a chain link fence vacant lot. So, however that needs to happen, I'd appreciate that.
We can sit down and discuss that.
I would
Commissioner Clark.
like to save you even more money and tell you to keep your fence. I'm not sure why we would need a fence there at all if you revegetate.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it'd be nice if it just looked like a park that nobody necessarily had to use a whole lot, but it was, it could be attractive looking even if it was just sort of revegetated and then mowed occasionally or something, but I'd like to work with you on that. And then I wanted to personally thank Dave and CDOT for the work that's going on up at Rainbow Falls and with Waldo Canyon, the efforts that you're making to look at culverts, to work with all of us regionally to figure out how to deal with the highway. I know that it's really an inconvenience for those of us that go back and forth and those that live up there who work down here when the road's closed, but I know that it's because you want to keep people safe, and so I just wanted to pass on my appreciation.
We'll pass that to plenty others that are, as Doug would certainly know, there's plenty of others doing the work.
And every once in a while we get aggravated emails, but, it's about safety.
If I could follow that,
Yes.
and Dave, don't run away yet. The plan that we have in place to move forward with the emergency improvements or the emergency repair work on Highway 24 in the Waldo Canyon area, what we plan to do is to construct a culvert that will handle a storm of the magnitude that we received in early August without overtopping the highway, without flooding the road and having the same type of situation that we encountered back then. So the new culvert will pass that flow. Unfortunately, it's going to take some time to build it. We're in the process of selecting a contractor at this point to move forward with the project. That's what things should look like before the next rainy season. We intend to have the facility in place to hopefully capture those types of events. So the betterment is on its way. We have the funding for it. We're moving forward with with selecting a contractor and scheduling the work. And I think Dave can provide a little bit more update on that.
Just real brief, if this is the right time, we're looking at beginning an industry review coming up this Monday, where that would be with the contractors we've selected that we've contacted. They will be seeing a first blush effort of the plans. I think we all realize there's some connectivity between the Waldo Canyon box culvert that Tom referred to. Right now we're targeting an 8 by 30 foot opening. With that, we were trying to size out an encashment facility up above Waldo Canyon. There was to be a tour of the site today. That's probably not going to be able to occur with the events that we're having happen right now with the road being closed. But that also is tied with, and Mayor Snyder, I've surely been thinking of you in this regard, bringing that water from the August 9th storm down to Fountain Creek entails some design difficulties down at the Rainbow Falls Bridge. So we're also including not only bridge repair work that was damaged with the flooding events we've had this summer, but also opening up the notch, if you will, between the Rainbow Falls wing wall and the rock face that's on the south side of Fountain Creek there. Coupled with that, there's some additional grade control structures possibly in between the new box culvert and the Rainbow Falls Bridge, and also some grade control devices down below Rainbow Falls. But with that industry review beginning the 16th, so that's Monday, the following Monday looks like when we're going to put out the final plan set with an award we're anticipating on the 23rd, and hopefully a notice to proceed to the contractor on September 30th. And I would say a 70 to 80 day duration of construction with that. The design is being completed as we speak. There are people working away right now to try to wrap up the details on what that's going to look like. When these plans go out, we're targeting having the business loop back open, Mayor Snyder, before Thanksgiving. That's a milestone we anticipate putting into the bid set. We are going to have one lane each direction for a period of time while the box culvert's being installed, and that will be on Main Line 24. But some of the other discussions we're having is over the Thanksgiving holiday, requiring that to be open for 2 lanes in each direction. So there might be a little bit of a downtime or a gap in that construction, but with the Thanksgiving holiday, that's something, Tom, we're considering is providing 2 lanes in each direction during that period. However, we're not looking like we're going to be up against next spring's rains. We feel very comfortable that this work can get cleared in time. And again, we're wrapping up the design on that system, as well as trying to capture some of that debris to capture some of those things that are now coming down along Highway 24 and along Fountain Creek, and capture those up above the highway and before they get onto the highway, certainly, and down further stream into Manitou.
Other comments? Trustee Stevens.
I just echo the appreciation that it's consideration of safety that CDOT has exercised on the closures. I know it's a pain in the neck all the way around, whether it's for public safety officials or for the citizens, but it's the right decision to do that, and I certainly appreciate the really quick effort that you've done to help mitigate some of those impacts that are due. And I would, at the meeting that we had, when was that, in June or something, where we sat down and you sort of reviewed what was happening, perhaps something like that might be helpful at this meeting at the next month or so to sort of provide a little more detail as to what's going on, because I think a critical message that needs to continue to go out is these are projects that are helping to minimize the damage, not to try to fix it and not to try to lessen will lessen it, but I think there's a unfortunate false sense of security out there when people see these projects going in place, and we can do all that we can to try to minimize, but there's still a great potential. I mean, we saw it in Green Mountain Falls that had the flooding a few weeks ago that had nothing to do with the burn scars. That those incidents can still happen, and those are still out there. And a question for you additionally is, what's the anticipated one-lane, you mentioned the one-lane closures that are anticipated with installing the box culvert in Waldo Canyon. Is that days, weeks, months that you anticipate doing one lane in each direction?
I would probably up to 3 months.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
And that could be certainly part of the report next month that will clarify that.
That's helpful.
Determine some expectations and brace some people in the community.
Just a clarification on the action item, there's 2 changes. The one is the shift from the westbound US 24 to I-25. And the second part is we're allocating funds for right-of-way on the Fillmore project. Where is that coming? Where is that funding? It's being shifted from?
I believe it's just, it's additional leftover seventh pot funds.
I believe
that are being
it
allocated.
originated in our bridge pool, our bridge funds that we have set up for our region, for Region 2. We've committed some bridge funding to that project for design and right-of-way, and this is to cover the overruns in the cost of the right-of-way settlement and the cleanup of the gas stations there.
Any further questions? Call the roll. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Commissioner Clark?
One question for CDOT. I'm assuming, we were really disappointed to find out that the Fillmore interchange was not funded through the Tiger grant application, and even though that was CDOT's number one to be funded, instead the fire suppression system in the Eisenhower Tunnel was funded, and I just, I don't know that anybody has any inside baseball knowledge, but it just seems odd that that would have been. Tom, do you have any insight as to why we didn't get the Tiger grant again?
Those are those
again, and again.
grants are very competitive. You know that, and
I know
we were
I'm very
fortunate and very successful to at least get one for Colorado. We got the money to go ahead and make some improvements, some much needed safety improvements with the fire suppression system at the Eisenhower Johnson Memorial Tunnel. But don't let your disappointment fester too long. There should be a ramp announcement later this week, and we'll keep our fingers crossed. All right.
All right.
Item B,
Dennis?
6B. Yes, Councilmember Knight.
Yeah, so the loss of the failure to get the Tiger grant, where does that put us on Fillmore?
Well, it's still in our ramp list, so we left it in there, hoping to get funding from one or the other.
Okay.
And that announcement will be made. There will be a public announcement, at least by the next.
Well, we'll get an email out to all the applicants either late Thursday or no later than Friday morning of the list of projects that have been recommended by what we call the sponsor coalition or the review committee, and that recommendation is to the Transportation Commission.
And they'll make the final.
The TC, the Transportation Commission, will make the final determination, and that's not actually going to happen until the October meeting, their October Transportation Commission meeting, about a month beyond the schedule that you see in front of you on your handout. But yeah, we'll know soon what that list looks like.
Clerk and Recorder Williams.
So, Tom, will that be on the stack meeting agenda for Friday then as well?
Yes, it will be.
I just haven't looked at the agenda for some reason. I've been working on something else.
We're saving the best for last. That's the last item on the agenda.
I should stick around to the end.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
You'll have full attendance.
She's been working on something else,
Board bylaws subcommittee update. Rob, do you want to take this one?
I think two of the committee members are here. The memo outlines their discussions and their recommendation. I don't know if Sally or Don, you want to
I can
overview
start,
that
and
for the
then I'm
board?
sure Don will fill in, if I might. Basically, we talked about including more non-voting members from the military installations and working with them so that although we have a representative here from the Business Alliance as it relates to the military, we kind of felt that it would help to do more outreach to them so that they understand what PPACG's role is here in our community, and provide them an opportunity to give a presentation for each of the installations as to their plans going forward on a regular basis, not necessarily all at the same time, but to kind of work that through the year so that we get an idea of what their major issues are related to just anything that they may be doing that we as elected officials need to know. Also to get them an opportunity to get to know a lot of us at the various entities and government agencies that serve them at the local level and obviously state level too when it comes to our partners that are here in the audience. We also talked about working to get a member from the Colorado Water Quality Control Commission, and then just sort of clarify our relationship with the Regional Business Alliance and the MAC membership. And also, just briefly, to also talked about Rob continuing that role that he played last year in reaching out to the member government entities again this year and just sort of rolling through to try and get to everyone so that they understand why we need their officials here at the table whenever possible, and Highway 24 isn't closed for our neighbors up the pass. But certainly to just get a better sense of what's going on in the military community, get them an opportunity to get to know us better. And I think by looking at this, it's basically non-voting. And then Rob was going to be reaching out. If we approve these bylaws, then we're going to go ahead and continue to reach out. And I don't know, Councilman Knight, if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, just a few. Because we as city council met with a couple of the wing commanders. They're all new, so they haven't. Still learning how to spell PPACG. But Rob is doing that reach out through the area chief of staff council. So we hope to get him on there. We did decide we leave it up to the 21st Space Wing commander. Rather, he wanted to send separate reps for Cheyenne Mountain and Peterson, or combine them into a single rep. So on the military side, that was about it. On the water and air quality, even though it's the air quality person that hasn't showed up for a while. Is that right, Rob?
Yes.
Yeah, so we decided we do want a water quality person on there. All the importance and all the regulations coming down, we thought it was pretty important. But we also kind of tasked Rob to help us go back out and actually get an air quality person showing up. And then the third person was the one that was a potential mandate, and I can't remember that position, and our recommendation forward is we'll wait until the mandate actually happens before we tackle that one.
Sure. And that was for a transportation representative. The feds are still working through what they want to do with that, whether it's a mandated voting member here or something else. So I think the subcommittee is recommending wait till the rule comes out before reacting to it.
Councilmember Miller.
I just think this is a great idea. I do really appreciate the Military Advisory Council membership. I think there's such unique viewpoints from each of the installations here that might not otherwise get filtered up. So I think it's a great idea, and I hope that they'll take it seriously and actually send their representatives. Because I mean, there are issues every day. The latest I've had is airplanes flying over rooftops in my neighborhood at 500 feet off the Air Force Academy. But I think this is a pretty good place to sort of have those.
And you're wondering what the problem is.
Well, yeah, I learned to fly in that pattern. I also live there and have to sleep during the day. So.
We get Army helicopters in mine, so probably Commissioner Heise's district too.
Colonel Moore?
Just an observation. I think this is an excellent idea for the council to be considering, simply because what the MAC focuses on is the interplay between the military communities and the civilian community, and trying to identify those needs that can be addressed in a kind of partnership way, or where the community needs to be vocal. For example, with regard to a base realignment initiative, if that were ongoing. What we're finding as we move forward this year is there is an increasing need to educate not simply this group, but the entire community about what the military units are doing and what their needs are. So we've changed our model as to how we educate our members, and I think that this would be a complementary kind of initiative, and would encourage the Council of Governments to act along supporting this idea.
Very good. So I don't know that this requires a vote at this time.
The request is the subcommittee recommending to the whole board, the board recommending we go out. And the recommendation in the memo is we'll come back to the board with text in the bylaws, continuing the outreach to try to have names for you as well, but to change the bylaws next month and release that for the 30 days, and you'll have your final action in November.
Okay.
What would be helpful, Rob, too, if I might, Mr. Chairman, is to just redline the version so we
Yes.
know exactly what's been changed as we bring it back to the
We
board
like
next
red line
month.
versions.
Okay.
We keep track that way, too.
Okay. Sounds good?
All right.
You know where you're headed then?
Yes.
Okay. Number 7 is our information items. Area Agency on Aging Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program Update. Welcome. We postponed you from a month ago. Good to have you back.
Yeah, that's okay. I almost didn't make it this morning. I live in Woodland, and they were literally dragging the road closed sign behind my truck. Yeah, my name is Scott Bartlett. I'm the lead long-term care ombudsman here at the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. And it's been a while since I spoke to the board, so I'll give an update about what the program is for those who've not had exposure to us before. What we are is we are advocates for residents of long-term care, meaning licensed nursing homes and assisted living centers in the Pikes Peak region. There's about there's 22 nursing homes and roughly 60 assisted livings that we visit nursing homes every month, and then the assisted livings on a quarterly basis. Sometimes more given, if there's problems and things in buildings. And how this all comes together, it's difficult sometimes for people to even say the word ombudsman, let alone understand what it is that we do. And we do our work through two different ways. We do direct complaint investigations about issues in long-term care. We'll receive calls, or in our visits, we'll talk to residents that have issues ranging from the food isn't any good to criminal activities such as financial exploitation, assaults, those kinds of things. And so our job in those cases is to make sure that the system's working for these people. We don't have any enforcement power, but we are there to make sure that these folks are heard and they're represented, and that the outcomes are good for these individuals. The other piece of what we do is consultation and education. So often we'll receive calls from family members or residents themselves, questions about, the facility is doing this, is this proper practice? They'll have questions about regulations. Often we'll talk to people that are entering long-term care for the very first time. Usually this is a crisis situation where an elder has taken a fall at home, has been recommended to go into long-term care. The hospital is saying that they have to be discharged, in a couple days. And these people have no resources. They don't understand the system. They don't know the difference between Medicaid and Medicare. And so they really have to get ramped up quickly as far as information to make some decisions. And so when they call us, we walk them through the things they need to consider, the things they need to do, and make sure that things go smoothly for those folks. A lot of times, facilities themselves will call us. Recently, there have been a couple deaths due to smoking in long-term care facilities here in the region. As a result, there were citations by the Department of Health. Some people got in trouble for improper practice. And what has happened is the community as a whole has looked at their smoking policies and kind of took a knee-jerk reaction as far as they were doing things like room searches in nursing homes for lighters and cigarettes and things like that. The intent, of course, is to keep people safe, but maybe that wasn't the best way to do that. So we help them develop policies with the residents around smoking. Much of what we do as far as care, the conflict is about the balance between autonomy, resident rights, and safety. Obviously, nursing homes are charged more to put more weight into the safety than they are autonomy. In these cases, like I'm explaining, we're there to ensure that there's balance and fairness in consideration to both sides of the issue. We investigate about 400 complaint investigations a year, again, ranging from care issues to things like exploitation. We work closely with Adult Protective Services law enforcement to get those cases looked at. Again, working with the facility to make sure that they're keeping people safe. And as far as consultations, we do about 1,400 of those a year. Again, those are not complaint investigations, but anytime we're offering information to consumers of long-term care services, to family members, to facilities, and so forth. So why is this important? Well, about 60% of nursing home residents do not have any family involvement. And so they do not have a voice. If you can put yourself in their shoes, there's a feeling of an imbalance of power. So if the people that are taking care of you are mistreating you, or you're not getting what you need, a lot of these folks don't feel empowered to say anything. And so when we talk to them, we let them know, this is what we can do for you. And then they're more empowered. Sometimes they'll go ahead and take that information and feel that they can advocate for themselves. Often they'll ask us to speak for them. The resident is always our client, so we don't do anything without the direction of the resident or their surrogate decision maker. So a lot of folks don't feel that they have a voice. We try and fit that need for them. An example of how this kind of comes together is a case we had several years ago in which one of our ombudsmen went to a facility, and I can talk about this because it became part of the public record. But a resident disclosed some abuse to one of our ombudsmen, being restrained at night, being beaten in the day, lots of improper care issues. This resident was not wanting to have us advocate for them because of fear of retaliation. So I asked our second ombudsman, Tina and Jeannie, to go over and talk to this resident again and make her feel like she had someone behind her. We can't investigate even abuse complaints unless we have authorization and consent from the resident. And going back a second time, she gave us that. We did an investigation. We substantiated the findings. We called the Department of Health. They came down. They did their investigation, and they cited them and substantiated all the claims the resident made. What was interesting about this certain facility is that the year before this, the exact same thing had happened. And so we reached out to the Department of Health and said, listen, this is a problem. This is a small assisted living where the owner lived on site, was the staff person, was the administration. So, I found it troublesome that we would allow this to continue a third time. Normally, that staff person would have been fired, their license reported, those kinds of things. And so I made that argument with the Department of Health, and the license was suspended. It took about a year to go through the hearings. The license was revoked, and just recently, she had a nursing license, and just recently we provided information to have her nursing license revoked. So, in that process, what we had to do, of course, was move out the residents that were left there. There is family members who I had to meet with. It created a pretty strong negative response from the family members when they heard that, the state of Colorado was coming in and saying that, their loved ones can't live in this home anymore. But after talking to them, explaining the situation, they became very reasonable and said, well, listen, we're happy that you guys uncovered this and that something's being done about it. Any questions about the program itself?
Questions for Scott?
Thanks for the work you're doing.
Thank you. And lastly, I think there's an article in your packet. I often run into residents that come from a ranching background, and that's something that's near and dear to my heart. And something that, I hear a lot is that these people didn't feel connected to that world anymore. And that was something that I could do something about. So I got some folks together. We contacted Miss Rodeo USA. They were here for the Pikes Peak or Bust Rodeo, and took 23 state rodeo queens to facilities to talk to folks. It was very well received. What was impressed me the most was how much the queens got from this. You know, I expected they do these things, frequently. They go and visit and promote rodeo and Western way of life, but they really felt a connection to these folks. And I received thank you cards from a number of them. So I was happy that they got something from it, and I was surprised at how much they did. Obviously, residents got a lot from it, took a lot of pictures with rodeo queens, and it was definitely a good time and valuable to residents of long-term care facilities.
So you just happen to have Miss Rodeo USA on your speed dial, or what? How did you know to contact me?
So I grew up with senior editor of Western Horseman magazine. We write a lot together and go to Western events. And I was telling her about this, and she said, well, I've been thinking about this too. I guess every year Western Horsemen, when they were here, before they moved to Fort Worth, used to host a lunch for the queens. And she's like, I want to try and do that again, even though the office isn't here. And then, it just kind of clicked. So, and then from there it took off.
Good.
It's really neat. It's great.
Other comments? Well, I'm glad you got to do something fun, because I have to tell you, I've never looked at your job and thought fun.
Yeah. Well, and that was part of the motivation for doing it too. And also exposure for the program. As Jeannie alluded to, not all long-term care residents know what an ombudsman is. Not all citizens in the community know what an ombudsman is. So any way we can get the word about the program out is a good thing too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate that. You may have just noticed we lost Mayor Snyder. They are evacuating over in Manitou Springs. Item B, Regional Transportation Plan Chapters Update. Greg Casper.
Good morning. And I always hate following Scott because my stories can't compare to his. So if you looked at, or when you looked at your attachments to your memo, you may have gotten a feeling of deja vu. It's because about 10 months ago, you approved an update to our current transportation plan, and about 10 months before that, you approved a whole update to the plan. Normally, we do this every 4 years, but CDOT has compressed the planning schedule, and as a result, in a year from now, we need to have a completed transportation plan. In the 9 months we've been working on the plan, I'll give you a quick update of where we are. We've gotten some of the items pretty well underway. The small area forecast, which is our collaboratively informed scientific guess as to where people are going to live and work in 5-year increments between now and 2040. We're at our 4th iteration of what that forecast looks like, and we're feeling pretty comfortable that we'll have it done in the next 2 or 3 months for you to review and approve, hopefully approve. The travel demand model, we've been incorporating the 2010 census, new traffic counts, new travel times, new travel survey into update our travel demand model, so it'll forecast our travel volumes so we can see what our needs are, what our project needs are going to be. We've gotten data from the Department of Revenue for crashes. All the reported crashes in our region are in El Paso and Teller County. We have geocoded from 2007 to 2012, and we're going to start doing some analysis on the crash data. Working with CDOT and our local entities to get condition of roads and bridges, and with Mountain Metro Transit on the condition of their vehicle fleet. That's one of the new requirements. We've had a couple of initial meetings on our congestion management plan, which is what we're going to do, how we're going to address congestion between now and 2040 going forward. The key parts of that are looking at an intersection. We know an intersection is congested now. We know we're going to need an interchange eventually, but we're not going to need it for a long while. Instead of jumping right to an interchange, what are the steps, incremental steps we're going to take? Are we going to add turn lanes, lengthen turn lanes, maybe change it from an intersection to a continuous full intersection, different types of intersections? So we'll update that plan, lay that all out, and you'll be seeing that hopefully in about 7 months. The non-motorized plan kicked off 2 months ago. We've got most of the data collection done. We've actually, we're collaborating with El Paso County, Sicaro Springs, Woodland Park, in addition to our normal collaboration. And writing, we have the consultants are writing the trails and sidewalks to get condition, find issues. Once we get all that data done, we're going to start the outreach process. It's going to be a much more web-based, user-friendly process to get input. And we should, next month, we'll be hopefully bringing the outreach back to you for you to see before we go out to the public with it. We've been working with Mountain Metro Transit. Instead of doing a transit plan and a specialized transit plan, that divide is somewhat artificial as planning goes. So we've been working with them. We have a draft scope of work to do a combined, one big sort of transit plan that covers specialized and regular transit. That scope is at review in Denver to make sure that it meets all the federal requirements for spending money. We hope to have that on the street in the next month. New requirement of MAP 21 is we have to do a freight plan. Our area, this is somewhat less important than in other areas. We don't generate a lot of freight. We don't receive a lot of freight other than at Fort Carson. We have a pretty good amount there. So we're waiting right now, honestly, just to see what is our need, what do we need to do in that area. MAP 21, since our last plan was adopted, the MAP 21 was passed, that added a lot of new requirements. Some of the main requirements are performance management and measurement to be included in the plan. The good news is we're better situated than most MPOs. We did that for our last plan already, just looking at what was being discussed in Washington. We went ahead and did a performance-based plan with our current plan, so that is going to ease some of our requirements, what we have to do. And a lot of it's still unknown about what MAP 21 actually requires. A lot of the memo that you read, I borrowed from FHWA PowerPoints that they had. Here's what we think right now, but we don't really know. But it's the best available information, so I put that in the memo for you. Last November, when we started talking about this update, the concept that we sort of started working from was going through the chapters. Since our plan was new, it was at that point 10 months old, had been through a pretty extensive process, update the data that we just talked about, make changes, go through the chapters one by one, highlight the changes that need to be made, start finding that data, and go through that, but keeping the vision and goals the same, and then changing the objectives, performance indicators, and weighting of the goals. We talked about that at the TAC. We've been talking about that for a while, and at the most recent TAC meeting, we got a little bit of pushback from a couple of the members that we have too many goals. Yes, we firmly believe that we have way too many indicators that we analyze projects with. That we have 17 goals, and some of the goals have 6, 7, 8 indicators, and some of those indicators actually are cross purposes with each other. So when you score a project that scores well on one indicator for the same goal scores badly on another indicator for that goal, and that's one of the things we really do need to fix. Eliminating some of the goals isn't as easy as it sounds. We developed the goals collaboratively with state and federal agencies that we're required to coordinate with, and our plan that we adopt must be consistent with their plans. And so the way we did that consistency before was developing the goals together. If we take those goals out, there are other ways to show consistency. They're somewhat more onerous, in my view. Individual projects have to be evaluated against all of the agency's goals and submitted to the agency to see if that project is consistent with their plan. That gets a little more difficult. And some of the goals are required. Our least popular goal, straight out, is our greenhouse gas reduction goal. It's one that's required by law. We have to have a greenhouse gas reduction goal. So, we can't take that one out. That's an obvious one. But what we can do is change the weighting, the relative weighting of that goal, the importance of that goal. So that we have what traditionally we use a percentage. We have 100% of our evaluation criteria. Goals that are unimportant can be weighted pretty far down. For the last plan we had the TAC did a weighting, the CAC did a weighting, and some of them conflicted. So we went out and we did a survey of the public, 500 people, and that actually confused the issue more. Every goal ended up the most important, and every goal ended up the least important. What we actually found is there's about 5 or 6 different pods of society. If you rated greenhouse gas and safety as 1 and 2, you probably rated pavement condition and something else bottom. So, and that really, we found these pods of society, which created some issues. So in averaging those out, which in retrospect wasn't the best way to do it, we lost a lot of that importance. But I know at the TAC we continue to hear that we have too many goals. And I guess I'm looking for some clarification on, should we continue, should we go back and try to revisit those goals and start, because it's going to be a lot more effort in a direction that we hadn't been going, or are we okay with keeping the goals we have and changing the indicators, reducing indicators to 1, maximum of 2 per goal, and make sure that the indicators don't cross-purpose each other? Then go through your rating, or would you prefer to start looking at eliminating some goals? And I know there's some members of the TAC who have had some issues that could just discuss that. So,
Okay. And we will be happy to hear from members of the TAC as well. Thoughts?
Maybe just one.
Commissioner Steen?
Are the goals progress goals in terms of what amount of incremental change you expect each year, or are they end state goals for where we expect to be over a longer period of time?
the goals are end state goals, but the objectives are progress goals. In 2015, we want to have a 3% reduction in congestion. In 2025, we want to have a 7% reduction in congestion. So the goals are more end state, bigger, fluffier sort of goals. The objectives that we do need to change are the hard list: 10% reduction in crashes, fatal crashes, 5% improvement in pavement quality. Those objectives are the incremental ones.
I guess what comes to mind, Craig, is that in the sustainable plan that we discussed several months ago, there were some goals, stretch goals, you called them, that were significant. And I'm wondering if this typically embraces those, or if they're independent of those.
This plan was actually developed in parallel with the sustainability plan, and we ran into a lot of issues with that. People were going to the wrong meetings. They didn't understand our plan, our goals were goals that can be achieved within our fiscal constraint. The sustainability goals are goals that are stretchy, that would require some change in how we live to achieve. And so actually in the first chapter, we rolled out our draft plan, and then we got a lot of feedback from the sustainability participants. Wait a minute. What happened to all X, Y, and Z that we talked about? It's like, well, that X, Y, and Z was on the sustainability plan. This is a transportation plan. Sort of to address that, we incorporated some of their concepts into the plan, but not so much the hard numbers. Because within our fiscal constraint, there's very few of those goals can be achieved from the sustainability.
Are the goals constrained, or are they independent of fiscal, legal?
Our goals are, I would say they're achievable within our fiscal constraint, not necessarily all of them. If we put all of our money into, say, pavement condition, we're not going to have money to do congestion, or vice versa within our, but individually, I would say they are individually achievable. It's the balance and the trade-offs and balancing between them that becomes more interesting. That's where the weighting really comes in. So,
Clerk and Recorder Williams.
So where's the best source for the goals and the subcategories?
Best source.
In other words,
where can we look at them?
They are attachment 3, I believe, of your. Let me check.
Okay, yeah, I see them.
Yep.
I see them at the back, and again, I apologize for not being more
that's-
diligent and looking at things ahead of time.
Well, we killed a tree with this memo. So.
And I think part of that is, there are lots of things that all have some impact, but this group has to be willing to say, these are the important goals for our community. And as folks who are elected, we need to pay attention to what the input is from citizens, and then ultimately make those hard choices and be willing to say, these are the 3 goals, or these are the 5 goals that we want to put most of the emphasis on. having other things in there as things that we look at is fine, but it needs to be achievable in a rational fashion. And so, when we say our goals are from pages 3 to 18, I'm not sure if a 16-page "these are our goals" document is really something very easy to explain to an average member of the community. And so I'd like us to streamline it some, but in many instances it may just be changing the weighting. So that's my input.
On page 25 of Chapter 2 has all the goals on one page. The attachment 3 is the description of the objectives and performance measures, rationale for them. But if you just want to see just the goals, it's page 25 of Chapter 2.
Do we have any way of knowing which ones are mandated? And
I can put those, and some of the mandate is relative. Let's see if I can find it. There's the environmental justice one is mandated. It's equal is goal number 9. Ensure transportation investments benefits are equally distributed to citizens with disabilities, low incomes, and special needs residents throughout the region. So goal number 9. That's something we have to check all of our projects against that. It's not necessarily required to be a goal. It's a necessary step that we're going to have to do anyway. So it's not going to save any work to not have it in there. And that actually, by having it as a goal, it makes it easier for us to say, yes, we comply because, see, it's one of our goals. So we evaluated it, when picking projects. But yeah, I could go through and create that list of required.
that might be useful. Councilmember Miller?
So on this list where you've detailed the objectives, does this include the stretch goals, or are these the attainable ones?
There's no stretch goals anywhere near our transportation plan.
Okay, so, well, I like the idea that there's, foundational sort of, it's working your way down in level of detail, and I think as far as citizens understanding what they are, I think it's really helpful, and this is something where, I could at least visualize, like on a website, these are our 9 goals. Well, if you want to drill down deeper, you click on each one and say, what are our objectives for each one? How do we measure each one? I think it's useful. I mean, you can pare down the details, but if the main goals are there, I think I'm pretty happy with that structure. I mean, again, the 16 pages that gives the great background. It's not so much that there's too many goals, but it gives detail how they can be measured and what are the specific steps to take to do that. And I think that's what makes goals, achievable, is when you connect them to the real world. And I think that's what you've done here with the detail. So I'm happy with that.
Rob McDonald, and then we'll start on this side.
We'll go around. Thank you. I think that, and this is for maybe some of the newer board members, we do this long-range plan to be eligible for all our federal funds. So when you hear Craig talk about we have to show consistency with other federal agencies, those goals come from there. And so in our last plan, and probably even before that, instead of taking each of the 150 projects in the long-range plan and proving through your staff work, so staff would have to prove in their application that Project A is consistent with all the other federal plans in the region. That's a lot of work times 150 projects for all the local governments and CDOT versus bring the goals from those other companion plans out in the region into our plan. It makes us have more goals, obviously. But when you do the evaluation through the matrix, you check off all those boxes, then check in with those other federal agencies and say, okay, you're consistent with our plan, so your project doesn't violate things in our plan. They send an email, a letter, say that's good. We have to have that check off from those federal agencies. Otherwise, our federal highway agency may say your plan's not consistent, so go back and do it again. Worst case, if they say that, you hold your federal funds until your plan's conforming, because it's federal funds, federal rules, and all those wonderful things that we fight all the time to get through that process. And so I think it's important for the board to know, as we go through the plan development in the next year, we've already done some work, as Craig outlined, But the next one is, we completely agree with the TAC and the CAC that talk about, boy, we got to really look at these objectives. The goals may be onerous. There's 6 or 7 that are absolutely transportation goals. We'd love to do that, but we would not love to recommend to your staffs they have to do an evaluation of every project to prove consistency with every other plan out there, and then get that feedback. We all know interagency agreements and communications sometimes take a little bit. We don't have that time, so we're just trying to get the board thinking about that. So when we go back to the CAC and the TAC and your staffs, we say, all right, we have these goals. They may be onerous, but let's attack these objectives. Maybe reduce that part of the analysis and the equations. So it's not an action item today. We're just trying to get a feel from the board. So when we go back to the committees and our staff, we'll come back with hopefully some way to get through the process and not make it a huge endeavor to do the analysis, leading to eventually the project lists that we all love to look at.
Start with Trustee Stevens.
Craig, this is probably a pretty simplistic view, but I'm looking at page 1 of attachment 3 and the 10 principles that are outlined there that were approved on February 10th. Those seem to be pretty concise and digestible by the common person, if you will, without going through the 16 pages. I'm wondering if aligning each of the existing goals underneath each of those principles is a way to simplify this, so that collapsing it in sort of a outline form, we're really talking about the principles and the goals just flow underneath that, and then we can get to the objectives and keep drilling down with further detail, but not trying to, and then with those principles, that's where perhaps the weighting can be the best way to lever that and get the best appropriate weighting amongst those principles, rather than trying to drill down and delete goals that either are required or not required, but that's just a kind of simplistic big picture view in my mind.
I can do that and look and see look to see what other places, because everybody around the country, there's 384 MPOs that are trying to figure out how to do this right now. So,
Councilmember Pecom.
Well, Rob, you actually answered most of my question, but one remaining thing here. On page 28, we've got the combined weights, which you talked about earlier. Do you need us to weigh in on that and kind of combine that with what Trustee Stevens just said about narrowing down the objectives to what are actually required as opposed to other kind of sort of stuff?
The evaluation criteria, you definitely have to weigh in, whether it's you go through the weighting exercise yourselves and come up with the board's weight, or whether you want us to go out to the public TAC, how you want us to do that. We definitely need that feedback.
That's what you need from us.
Yes.
Okay.
Whether you're approving the weighting, the methodology we did, and then approving the weights, or doing the weighting itself is up to you, but we definitely need you to weigh in on that.
Okay. Let me go to someone who hasn't commented on this yet, Councilmember Knight, and we'll go to Clerk Recorder Williams.
I would offer 2 suggestions. One, if you can reduce by combining wherever possible. Some are objective goals, some are process goals. And I think the processes can be rolled in when you look at 17. And then I would look at parallelism and especially on the level of detail, because some of these objectives are solve world hunger and other objectives are go buy a quart of milk. And, so, if the objective is that detailed, it probably doesn't need to be a goal. Like on 17, go get an invite list, or generate a list of invitees to send emails to, where the other objectives are, meet the national standard. So I think if you try and get parallelism among them in level of detail, level of importance, that might help you do some combination also.
Clerk and Recorder Williams.
Okay, this is my input. I'm not saying it's what we should do. It's what I think. If I look at these and I look at what concerns residents generally have raised to me as I've knocked on doors, as I've visited with people, as I've listened to them for more than a decade in elected office. I don't have a whole lot of people that approach me on most of these issues complaining about the subject. I have people talking about, how come I can't get home to get to my kid's soccer game? How come there's potholes in front of my street? And why don't we have better jobs in the area? Those are the subjects that people express to me. Yeah, there's some election-related stuff now, too, but that's different. So I guess what I would look at is I'd make 1, 2, and 11 major goals, and then have other goals. Because I think it's important. All of us want clean air, clean water, and so it's something we need to make sure continues to be maintained as we go through adopting transportation plans. But the purpose of a transportation plan is not to minimize stormwater runoff. I mean, that's an important aspect of it. We need to make sure that's considered. But the major objective is increasing mobility, making it so I can get to my kid's soccer game, making sure the roads don't fall apart, and ultimately creating an economically viable community. And so, in my world, if it were just me, I would divide them into, these are our major goals and these are other goals that we have. And I think it's important to recognize those are goals that but, bottom line, we're not running a transportation system with the goal of helping the Preble's jumping mouse. And so item 13 is there, and yeah, it's something we need to do, but that's not the major goal of the system. So I would divide it in kind of major goals and other goals, and I think that's an easier way of communicating it, and I might reword a couple of these. But that's the thrust I would do, is I would tell people these are major goals of the system, and then these are the other things we want to make sure occur while we're doing it. And that's my input.
Colonel Moore?
If I could step outside of my corral for a second.
We've noticed Dr. Knoll do that a time or two. So.
Maybe it's catching. As from 2 points of view, as a relatively uninformed community person, and also having spent some 26 years involved with the federal bureaucracy, I think the dilemma, and Rob laid it out, I think, very nicely, is we've got a batch of stuff that's been thrown at us in various degrees of mandates that require some recognition that either a project applies or doesn't apply, and somehow we need to sort that out. I think the idea of looking at the priorities or the values was a very good one. I think that Clerk and Recorder Williams has laid out how we could prioritize some of that, but at some point there's a bureaucrat somewhere whose pet rock is represented in this list, and they're going to want to see that we thought about it. I envision 150 projects, is that right?
About that.
Yeah. I envision a very long chart that's got this set of stuff across the top, and every project, and if it applies, then there's been some indication we've thought about it. And if it doesn't apply, we've got a black mark that says disregard this kind of thing. But that has to somehow be addressed in here, and at the same time, the priorities laid out so that we know where the real emphasis belongs. I don't know if that's particularly satisfactory, but I think Wayne has really laid out what the realities are from the community point of view. Frankly, if air quality suffers, but I can still get somewhere, I may be able to live with that. And so that payoff is important from the citizens' point of view.
Other comments, direction?
Curious as to the tax take on it.
Sure.
They're in the
Members
same-
like to weigh in on this?
They're in the same boat.
I will gradually come up with pushing from my colleagues.
They got your back.
Well, I do think that there are a lot of goals. I understand where we are in this very short and condensed process. And what we're being asked to do is narrow down the number of objectives that we use to measure. My concern is that we don't know what our baselines are and what the data currently says. And so it's really hard to narrow and pick certain performance measures when we don't know what the underlying data says. And so that's my struggle. I think we can work through it. I think it's going to take a little time, but that's really where my struggle is that I don't know what the data says right now. And so it's hard to pick. This is the right one to use when I don't know what any of the data are for any of them. So if that, in a very short way, explains it, I'm happy to answer any questions. It's just a tough position to be in is where we are. It's a tough spot.
Sure. Tom?
And just to add to statements made before about parallelism and things like that, one of the things that we're struggling with is we think there's some overlap and that we can still conform with the guidelines for all of these goals if we condense some of them and combine some of them together so that they're not so confusing to the average person. We've got goals in here. If you look at the goals, this one includes 2, 4, and 7. This one also includes 11, 12, and 13. I think if we can condense some of them, and we're trying to make it a little simpler for everybody to understand. And I think that's one of the problems the TAC is having, and that's why we've asked for a sort of a chart to try to see if we have some of those things that can be cross-referenced and deleted and moved together so that we have a simpler form, still in conformance with all of the rules. So that was one of our other problems that we had.
Okay. Commissioner Steen?
As I think about this, I'm just wondering, I'm trying to determine what these numbers mean, the evaluation criteria, figure 2.2. Does a high score mean that this is important, or does it mean that things are broken and that efforts required to get it back up to standard?
That is the percentage of importance that goal carries. So 10% on, I'll go across the transportation system condition, 10% of the weight, with 17 goals, 10% of the weight goes to system preservation from the TAC and the CAC. From the phone surveyor, 7% said, if you were to divide $100, 7, you'd put about that much money into those kind of projects. So those are percentages. They should add up to 100% when you get to the bottom. So.
Okay, so just on that first one, transportation system conditions, if it's perceived that the transportation system is in excellent shape, it could still receive a high score because it's viewed as important.
Exactly.
Not that additional efforts required to bring it up to.
No, and it should be proportional. Something that's getting 7% of the weight should be twice as important as something that's getting 3.5% of the weight.
Okay.
They should be relatively that important to each other.
Okay. Other comments?
I'd just say I'm combining 15 and 16 both deal with air quality, so that seems like a very easy one to combine.
Councilmember Pico?
Yeah, I think we probably just need to, as a first step, go in there and do the scrub of what is actually required and what's not, because the whole point of this is to comply with the federal requirements, right?
Yep.
So to go through this thing and try to weed out those things that aren't absolutely required, and then do also the combining, and so we can neck this down instead of having such a long list that we're working with that has so much overlap. Makes it really tough. I can appreciate your problem.
Yeah, and it's an issue, like I said, we're somewhat lucky. The land use plans, our economic development plans, our conservation plans aren't directly contradictory. There are places in the country where the plans that the transportation plan has to be consistent with contradict each other.
Yes.
And the direction from federal highway to those MPOs was, we'll make it work. Figure it out. So
Craig, do you have what you need from us?
I think so. I'll go back, look at, and I just lost the page I wrote my notes on. Put the goals into the principles, look at figure out which ones are required, look at which ones we can combine, try to get a similar level of detail across all the objectives. So those are the principal parts I heard, and I'll review the video for more parts.
Commissioner Clark?
Just as think it was Mark Twain said, I would have written less if I'd had the time. So when exactly do we need to have this pared down to be put into approval plan?
Really soon, because we don't want to gather data.
What is really soon mean, Greg?
Next month or two.
Okay.
We don't want to gather data because it's a lot of effort to gather the data if we're not going to use it for goals. And it's one of those chicken and egg things. You know, we gather the data. Oh, it shows this. Well, then we should have gathered that data. And
Well, and I'm a big one for making sure that we make it as short and understandable as possible. So I agree with paring this down. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Statewide Transportation Advisory Committee agenda discussion. And if the three of you, if you all show up there, surely you can just outnumber them. Note we have all of our reps here today.
It's a big, big table.
It's
A lot of seats.
and there's a lot of folks there from other places. No, we will not outnumber them. Tom's already talked about the important thing, really from a funding standpoint, which is the ramp update, which is the last item on the agenda. Other things on the agenda, there's the ongoing issue at the federal level with they've written an authorization bill. I'm saying the words right. That's not matched by the appropriations bill at the federal level. I know you're shocked to hear that. And so they still have to deal with how they're going to make that work. And we then have some other items, many of which are kind of ongoing items. The budget for fiscal year 15 doesn't have the volatility that it used to before Senate Bill 1 funds were eliminated. But coming up and in the is the projection that under Senate Bill 228, which kind of replaced billions of Senate Bill 1 funds with a few $100 million of 228 funds, is the allocation of those. And so as we look forward to the budget as to when that actually is going to hit. And that's one of the things that they're looking at in terms of trying to fund the Baptist Road repayment for the community here. And so that's kind of a budget issue coming in the future. The other thing I'd note is the compressed natural gas thing you see, which you may say doesn't really affect us. There is a push from the governor's office to take money away from regions for transportation funding in order to ensure CNG stations are built across Colorado, on the theory that if you know there's a station everywhere, then you are more likely to use a CNG vehicle. And the issue is whether that should be coming from what source would you use for it. And one of the things they're talking about is using CMAQ funds as one of the major sources for that, which could have a direct impact on the flexible funding that comes directly into our community. Tom, am I other things that you think we need to cover here?
No, I think you covered most everything.
Right.
Wayne, yeah.
Okay. And Norm's.
The one add-on. I think the board got an email out of the listening tour that CDOT is doing to some of the other planning regions. In that line of thought, also sent a letter out to the board for review to send Executive Director Don Hunt of CDOT. I'll call it a reminder letter for the ramp projects, and that list we anticipate may come out as early as Friday to the stack, the first go of that list. And what I'd asked the board and for the chair to sign, if the board agreed, to send that letter to Don Hunt and copy to the governor and transportation commissioners. It's a parallel effort to the regional mayor's caucus, who sent a letter to the same folks a week or so ago. Mayor Bach signed the letter and sent it off as it's almost same type of letter, just a reminder that we're still interested in ramp, paying attention to the process. The decision by the commission is now in October, so we do have some time. The question of the board, do you want to send the letter or just let the list come out?
I would probably like to see the list before we send a letter.
And my advice at this stage is I'm sure that list is pretty much done on the internal. I doubt it's going to change radically in the next day, regardless of what letter we send. So I think it'd be better to see what's on the list and then be prepared to send a letter out very quickly saying we endorse this list or we think there are significant issues with the omission of these critical projects. But I think having it ready to go is wise, but I would wait to see it since it's only a couple days before that list is coming out.
Tom, did you have a comment on that process? I thought I saw your hand go.
Well, and that's your call as the board, whether you send the letter or not. I do have one comment. Maybe this is a matter of managing expectations or clarifying. The partnership ramp request was for $30 million. 24 million ramp request for the $30 million project was $6 million of local match, and this letter, as well as the mayor's letter, referred to a $50 million ramp request. I'm assuming that other 20 is the identified deficit that could be funded with asset management piece, but that's not up for consideration at this time. Asset management is tied to the condition of the facility, and the money is distributed accordingly in a calculated fashion. So just to clarify that piece.
And the 50, the umbrella we used as ramp, because even asset management is under the total ramp program. And so we just combined the two based on the funding chart we sent to the board months ago. Because there was an asset management.
But that money's not allocated based upon a request or an application. It's based upon the condition of the facility.
Agreed.
And determined by CDOT staff and
we can clarify that in the draft ready to go letter.
That works.
Which may be revised considerably.
Other comments? Okay. Item number 8.
I have
Commissioner Clark.
And just related, but not specifically, I mean, we all talk about transportation here. Wanted to mention that some of us are going to Washington, D.C. next week to talk about transportation, among other things. And if there are items that need to be passed on, are you on the Transportation Committee?
No, I'll be on the military.
Okay, so that would be, I don't know, one of us will be working, not me, I'm on fire and flood for some reason. It's important to pass on any thoughts as it relates to federal legislation having to do with transportation. So, Rob, if you can make sure you touch base with us before we leave Monday.
Sure. Any other board members?
Anybody else going on it's the Regional Business Alliance trip. So just to let you know, because we do work with this board participates in the federal lobbyist efforts, and so anything you need to pass on to us, we need to know that ahead of time.
Will do.
Okay.
You're on fire and flood. Who has locusts?
I don't know. I don't think that's covered.
Member entity announcements. Anybody have anything for the good of the group?
Grasshoppers.
Quiet group this morning.
Actually, yeah, I'll tell you, we've gotten your ballot certifications for those of you from other municipalities and with districts. We've not really looked at them very thoroughly, but we will be in the next little bit. And so if we have any questions on them, we'll be following up with you shortly.
Okay.
Rob, is Jason coming back?
Should be back Monday. See you next month.
Very good. Trustee Stevens.
The exciting little hamlet of Green Mountain Falls has approved 5 petitions to form for recall of the 7 of us, so there will be a little excitement if the recall folks
You're
can-
not one of them, though, are you?
I am not one of them. Mixed emotions, but
Why not?
that's right.
Oh,
And so if they're able to collect signatures, we will be proceeding with another recall election. And thanks to Clerk and Recorder Williams for, we were intending to, I'm not sure where we stand, but we're working with you and have approved the concept of forming an IGA with the Clerk and Recorder to facilitate this election. So it should be interesting, and we're learning lots.
I'm just hoping there's a little less litigation and a little less publicity on this one. We don't need $3 million spent on the Green Mountain Falls recall.
You never know.
Anyone else? Do you have our meeting schedule? With that, we are adjourned.
What is the recall?
Yes, it's good to meet you. Thank you. Yeah, I think, you know.